Students, today we are going to discuss a new chapter of intermediate second year, that is electricity. There are many chapters on electricity. We divide them as static electricity, current electricity, magnetic effects of current, electromagnetic induction. First of all, what is electricity? We cannot imagine our life without electricity. Suppose if there is no electricity, suddenly if electricity disappears in the universe or in the world, uh, in few days we go back to hundreds of years. So the so-called civilization is 100% based on electricity, right? Electricity has become the artificial biggest source of energy after the natural source of solar energy. Now, what do you mean by static electricity? In this chapter, we deal with electric charges which are at rest. Now, electricity, the basic term of electricity is electric charge. What is electric charge? We will discuss. Now, electric charge is nothing but a excess number of electrons or scarcity of electrons. So, scarcity of electrons or excess number of electrons leads to electrification, that we will discuss. So, now let us consider there are two electric charges which are at rest. Static means at rest. In static electricity, we deal with the electric charges which are at rest. We study the interaction between these two charges which are at rest. In static electricity, we come across the force of attraction or repulsion between the charges. We come across the electric fields produced by the charges which are at rest. We come across voltage. So, in our textbook, based on static electricity, there are two chapters. We will discuss in detail. Now, what do you mean by current electricity? Current means, most of the people think that current is nothing but electricity. The meaning of current in English is flow. So, when charges are flowing, we deal that with current electricity. We call that the flow of electric charge is called as electric current. The next step of electric charge, when it moves with respect to time, then we call it as electric current. A moving charge not only produces electric field, it also produces magnetic field. This was first discovered by Oersted, a scientist by name Oersted. So, when current is passing through a conductor, it produces magnetic field around the conductor. Conductor is a wire. So, that we will discuss in magnetic effects of current. So, magnetism is produced by electric field. So, magnetic field is produced by electric field. In last chapter, that is electromagnetic induction, we take the reverse. Magnetic field produces electricity or electric field. The reversal of this is studied in electromagnetic induction. Electromagnetic induction is responsible for the production of electricity, that may be in the form of thermal power, or that may be in the form of hydroelectric power, or that may be due to a nuclear power. So, in all these power plants, the basic principle is electromagnetic induction, and it was introduced by Faraday. Faraday is responsible for our sophisticated life. We are enjoying our life because of electricity. Almost all the appliances, 99.99% of the machines in the world are working based on electricity, that is electrical energy. Now, let us go into electrostatics. The name of the chapter is electric charges and fields. Now, we will discuss what is an electric charge, what is the meaning of electric field, how we can interpret electric field, that we will discuss now. Now, what do you mean by electric charge? As I told you, electric charge is indicated by Q, a letter Q. Some people indicate it by capital Q also. It doesn't matter. What do you mean by electric charge? Electric charge is nothing but the excess number of electrons or less number of electrons that are existing in a material leads to electric charge. Because of this electric charge, it can produce electric field and magnetic field. The electric charge can be affected by both these fields. It is that produces electric and magnetic field. It is that can be affected by both these fields. That is called electric charge. In 600 BC, a Greek philosopher by name Thales studied first electric charge. He took amber. Amber is a type of resin, and he rubbed with straws. He rubbed with some material, and he kept this amber near the pieces of straw, and those pieces, the bits of straw, were attracted to the amber. So he was the first person to specify there are two types of charges. Two types of electric charges are existing. Later, these two types of charges were named as positive and negative charges by Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin is responsible to name two types of charges as positive charge and negative charge. He could have named them in the reverse also, because these two types of charges are of opposite nature. That is the reason why he thought of giving two different names having opposite nature. That is, one is positive, the other one is negative. Now what is happening? How we are electrifying a substance? So giving charge is called electrification. Now what is happening in rubbing two materials? Now I will take a glass rod. This is a glass rod. You take a glass rod, or you take a comb and rub it with your dry hair, and place the comb in the small pieces of paper. The pieces of paper cling to the comb. You take a glass rod, you rub it on a silk cloth. So because of rubbing, because of the friction, some electrons are exchanged between these two. Transfer of electrons is taking place. So this glass rod gives out electrons to the silk cloth, so it becomes positive. The lack of electrons is giving positive charge. Now these electrons are taken by silk, and here there are excess number of electrons, so it becomes negative. Now according to modern theory, each atom, we know about the atom, each atom has got nucleus. So what are there in the nucleus? In the nucleus you have protons and neutrons. Proton is positively charged and neutron is neutral. Around the nucleus we have orbits, and these orbits are having electrons. Electrons are negatively charged. The outermost electrons, that means the electrons of the outermost shell, can easily be removed, or you can add few more number of electrons to the outermost shell of the atom. So what is happening? If I remove electrons in any atom, all the atoms are neutral in nature. What do you mean by neutral? Neutral means number of protons are equal to number of electrons. Both proton and electrons have got same charge and opposite in nature. That means proton has got plus 1.602 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb of charge, whereas electron has got the charge of minus 1.602 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb. Now what I mean to say is, there are number of positive charges with there are equal number of positive charges and negative charges. The resultant is 0. For example, you take the example of sodium. In sodium, you have 11 positive charges and you have 11 negative, that means electrons. The resultant is 0. If I remove 2 electrons from the sodium, I cannot remove protons because both protons and neutrons are strongly bound by nuclear forces. It is impossible to remove a proton or a neutron, but it is very easy to remove the outermost electrons. They can be easily removed. Now I am removing 2 electrons from the sodium atom. So when it loses 2 electrons, what happens? There is no change in the number of protons, that means positive charges. So it will be same, plus 11, but 2 electrons are lost. So the result is plus 2. I am getting positive charge because of losing electron. You consider the same sodium atom, you give 2 electrons extra to this already existing 11. So it becomes plus 11. I am giving 2 more, so it becomes minus 13. So I am getting minus 2. So excess number of electrons are existing, then I have got negative charge. If less number of electrons are existing, then I have got positive charge. So that is the reason. So exchange of electrons is the responsibility of producing electric charge. So that is, I think that is clear. So any charge, if you take any charge is nothing but some number of electrons. This is called quantization of charge, that we will discuss later. Here n is a number, it can be 1, 2, 3, infinity. It can be up to infinity. So I can put plus or minus. Plus stands for positive charge and negative sign stands for negative charge. So plus means giving out electrons, minus means taking the electrons. So this is the method of electrification by rubbing. So here friction, due to friction, I am creating an electric charge in a neutral substance. Naturally, all the substances are neutral in nature. So this effect is also called triboelectric effect. Tribo means friction. So I am getting electrification because of friction. So this is one method of electrification. There is another method. The second method is by conduction. What do you mean by conduction? Suppose there is a sphere which is already charged. Let us say it is positively charged. I bring another uncharged sphere and I will keep it in contact with this one. So what happens? The positive charge goes to the second sphere and both will acquire equal amount of charge and equal type of charge. That means it also becomes positive. Suppose previously it has got Q charge. So after conduction, both will get Q by 2 and both are positive charges. Suppose this is a charged sphere of charge Q1, another one is also charged Q2 of same type, for example. I keep them in contact with each other. Due to conduction, the charge on each sphere will become the average of these two, Q1 plus Q2 by 2. This is by conduction. And the third one is by induction. Induction is a process where a type of nature is created not by touching the object. Right. Now, here is a big positively charged metal sphere. I brought one object which is neutral. As soon as it comes into the vicinity of the first sphere, negative charges are induced on this side. The nearer side, why? So polarization takes place. The strong positive charge attracts all the negative charges. So it is polarizing the neutral atoms. So negative charges are induced here. On the farther side, you will get positive charges. Now if I connect this to the ground, then electrons will flow and it neutralize this part. Now this will become only negatively charged object. So in this way, a neutral object can be charged negatively. If I want to charge it positively, I have to put it in the neighborhood of a negatively charged sphere. This is by induction. We can have number of, we can give number of examples for electrification even in the nature also. The best example is lightning. In lightning and in thunders, the basis principle is triboelectric effect. So what is happening in the case of clouds? In summer season, we have dry and humid atmosphere. So when two big clouds come nearer to each other, they rub on each other. They undergo friction. So one gets positive charge, the other one gets negative charge. the huge amount of charges are accumulated negatively, opposite signs are, charges of opposite signs are accumulated on a larger scale. So what happens, as soon as they come very nearer to each other, very high amount of current passes from positive cloud to the negative cloud. So this high amount of current produces very high temperature of the range of 15,000 degrees Celsius. So because of this high temperature, the air between these two clouds start burning. They give a lot of light because of burning. So that light is called lightning. You will get sparks. That is called lightning. You can see the light that is passing through the air. Actually, current, electricity does not pass through air molecules. Why it is passing? Because of this high temperature, the gas in between these two clouds ionized, becomes ions. That state is called plasma state. In plasma state, electricity can pass through. Is it clear? Right. So, because of this high temperature, suddenly the air between these two also explodes. So, explosion gives sound that we call as thunder. Suppose there is a big positive charged cloud above a tall structure, for example, a multi-storied building or a cell phone tower. So, what happens? This positive charge induces negative charge on this. So, there will be electrostatic attraction. So, because of this electrostatic attraction, huge amount of current, the current that can be used to supply thousands of houses for 2 to 3 months. So, this amount of current in a fraction of second suddenly falls onto this taller structure, that we call as thunderbolt. So, thunderbolt is nothing but the striking of lightning on the ground. So, because of this, the whole building is electrocuted. There will be a lot of danger with these thunderbolts. Is it clear? So, in order to avoid this, what they do on the taller or bigger structures, they arrange metal rods, generally made of copper. This metal rod is connected to the ground. So, instead of inducing negative charges on the topmost of the building, it induces negative charges on these rods made of copper. So, the current from the cloud falls on this, and this current chooses the path where there is no resistance. So, instead of going through the building, it goes through the rod and reaches the ground. So, there is no harm to the building. So, that is the reason why they are called lightning arresters. So, it arrests the lightning, it arrests the current, it saves us. And these are the examples of electromagnetic induction. This static electricity is also utilized in Xerox machines. Xerox machine for photocopying, or in a laser jet printer. In laser jet printer or in any Xerox machine, there will be a drum, a cylinder made of aluminum. It is coated with a material called selenium. Selenium is a photoconductor. When light falls on selenium, it conducts current. The place where there is no light, it behaves like an insulator. So, it is given positive charge. When this is exposed to the image of the paper, those letters will be copied onto this. The place where the letters are copied, they will be remaining as positive charge, and at the remaining places it will be neutral. And this drum attracts dark powder particles. They are called toner particles. So, toner particles have got negative charge. So, these negative charged particles, toner particles, get attracted to the drum where there is positive charge. That means at the place of letters, this ink is nothing but toner particles. And these toner particles get attracted to the white paper. So, white paper must be given a more positive charge. So, because of heat and pressing, these toner particles get printed on this white paper. This is one. And another one is, it is also used in inkjet printers. That is electrostatic attraction principle is used in inkjet printers, where ink is used instead of toner. It is also used in air purifiers. The same inkjet principle is also used in painting of metals without wasting any paint. So there will be a nozzle from which paint is ejected out, or it is sprayed. So during this, because of friction, it gets, let us say, some negative charge. I want to paint it on a metal sheet, for example, the surface of the car. So the surface of the car is given positive charge. So whatever the paint is sprayed, all the droplets will be attracted and they will be falling on the surface. So no paint is wasted. And uniformly coated. It is also called powder coating. So in many other situations, we make use of this electrostatic attraction. So by using this electrostatics principle in a instrument called Van de Graaff generator, very high voltage is produced. Van de Graaff generator, you might have seen in YouTube videos, right? So we come to a conclusion that there are two types of charges. One is positively charged, the other one is negatively charged. So like charges, they repel. Either plus plus or minus minus, they repel. Unlike charges, they attract. A scientist by name Coulomb, you should call it as Coulomb or Coulomb, the B is silent. Coulomb proposed one law which gives the expression for the force acting between the two charges. The electrostatic force acting between any two charges is given by Coulomb's inverse square law. According to Coulomb's inverse square law, suppose I have two charges. These are the two charges, Q1 and Q2. They are separated by a distance, let us say d. D is the distance. According to Coulomb's inverse square law, the electrostatic force of attraction or repulsion, it can be attraction or repulsion depending upon the type of the charges that are existing. So according to this law, the force of attraction or repulsion is directly proportional to the magnitudes of the two charges. It is inversely proportional to the distance of, square of the distance of the separation. Now I will combine, I can write this as F is proportional to Q1 Q2 by d square. So instead of writing proportionality relationship, I can write a constant. So that constant is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by d square. This is the expression for Coulomb's inverse square law. So what is epsilon naught here? Epsilon naught is called permittivity of the free space. Permittivity of the free space. What do you mean by free space? Free space indicates that air or vacuum. That is, in between these two charges, if there is air or if there is nothing, then I have to take epsilon. According to Coulomb's inverse square law, the force of attraction or repulsion also depends on the medium that is existing between these two. So permittivity is the property of the medium, whether it allows electric field through it or whether it does not allow, that is decided by epsilon. If there is another medium, let us so if there is no medium, I write it as F naught. Suppose if there is some other medium, this whole area is filled with some air or some oil or something else. In that case, suppose there is a medium, some medium is existing, then I have to write 1 by 4 pi epsilon. So naught indicates free space. Epsilon Q1 Q2 by d square. This is the formula. The ratio of these two permittivities, that is called relative permittivity. Relative permittivity is epsilon by epsilon naught. It has got no dimensions and units. This relative permittivity is also called dielectric constant. It is also called a dielectric constant. The another advantage of Coulomb's inverse square law is it defined the SI unit of charge. What is the SI unit of charge? The SI unit of charge is also named after Coulomb. The SI unit of charge is Coulomb, indicated by C. How to define Coulomb's inverse square law based on this? That we will do. Now, the value of epsilon naught and what is the value of 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught? 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught is equal to 9 into 10 to the power of 9. So, what are the units? So, this is Newton meter square by Coulomb square, where C is the unit for the charge. There are two charges. I can write epsilon naught value also. It is 8.85 into 10 to the power of minus 12. So, reversal of this Coulomb square by Newton meter square. This Coulomb square per Newton meter square is also called Farad per meter. Farad is the unit for capacitance, and this will become meter for Farad. This epsilon by epsilon naught, the ratio of this is called relative permittivity. Its value is infinity for a good conductor, that is metals. So, good conducting metals, it is infinity. But air or vacuum, ER is 1, because both are epsilon naught, you will get 1. So, this is about Coulomb's inverse square law. Now, how to define the SI unit of charge, that is Coulomb. Now, in this equation F is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. So, this is anyhow 9 into 10 to the power of 9. So, I will write F is equal to 9 into 10 to the power of 9 Q1 Q2 by d square. I take two identical charges. Let us say Q1, Q2 are equal. Let us say that is equal to Q. And I am taking the distance of separation as 1 meter. Now substitute. So in that case, let us say if F is equal to 9 into 10 to the power of 9. I am taking two identical charges which are separated by 1 meter, and the force existing between them is also 9 into 10 to the power of 9. In that case, so left hand side is 9 into 10 to the power of 9, right hand side 9 into 10 to the power of 9. So this becomes Q square and this becomes 1. It gets cancelled. You will get Q square is equal to 1. That is Q is equal to 1. So this charge, this amount of charge is equal to 1 coulomb. So when two identical charges with a charge of 1 coulomb, if they are separated by a distance of 1 meter, then the force of attraction or repulsion acting between them will be equal to 9 into 10 to the power of 9 newtons. So SI unit of charge Coulomb is defined as that amount of charge existing on identical charges which are separated by 1 meter, and the force, if the force acting between them is 9 into 10 to the power of 9 newtons, then that amount of charge is equal to 1 coulomb. There are limitations for Coulomb's inverse square law. So after hearing inverse square law, you might have thought of another inverse square law that you studied in your +1 level, that is in the first year. What is that? That is Newton's law of universal gravitation. So Newton's law of universal gravitation is similar to this. Here we write F is equal to G m1 m2 by d square. So this we call it as gravitational force, and here we call it as electrostatic force. So which one is bigger? If you see the value of this one, it is of the order of 10 to the power of minus 11. It is of the order of 10 to the power of 9. This constant value. So Fe is very much greater than Fg. If you take two protons, and if you calculate the ratio of Fe by Fg, it will be around some 2.4 into 10 to the power of 39, if I am not mistaken. Is it clear? Right. Here the only difference is this is always attractive force. That is the reason why there is a negative sign. It can be attractive or repulsive. While doing the problems, we have to consider the direction of the force also. That we will do in one problem. What are the limitations? limitations of Coulomb's inverse square law. You have to remember that Coulomb's inverse square law is valid only for point charges. That is, the size of the charged object, if it is bigger or larger, you cannot apply point charges. You cannot apply Coulomb's inverse square law. That is very, very important. This is the first limitation. The second limitation is you can apply Coulomb's inverse square law when charges are at rest. These are the two conditions. Then only Coulomb's inverse square law is valid. Otherwise, no. Right. If there are many charges, that is multiple number of charges are existing, then how to calculate the force acting on one particular charge among those charges? Suppose there are many number of charges. I will take number of charges. Among all those charges, I am interested in this charge Q. So this is Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 and many. The force exerted by Q1 on Q, let us say F1. The force exerted on Q by Q2 is, let us say, F2, F3 and so on. So you have to use principle of superposition. Force is nothing but a vector, so it's a vector addition. In such case, the resultant force acting on this is given by F1 plus F2 and so on. So principle of superposition. The same principle of superposition holds good even in the case of intensity of electric fields, that is field strengths. Even in that case also, E1 plus E2 and so on. That means the force acting between these two is no way affected by the force acting between these two or between any two. All the forces are behaving individually. So one is not going to affect the other one. So this is about the principle of superposition in the case of Coulomb's inverse square law. We continue the same even for intensity of electric field, that we will discuss later. Now, I will take one example. There are four charges of magnitudes plus q, plus q, plus q, placed at the four corners of a square of side, let us say a meter. Now I want to know the resultant force acting on this. So how many forces are acting? Let us say this is charge 1, this is 2, this is charge 3. So all are repelling each other. So this force, that is say, let us say F1, is acting like this. And this is due to third one is acting in this direction. So this is F2. So distances are equal, magnitudes of charges are also equal. So I can write F1 is equal to F2 is equal to F is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2, that is Q square, distance is A square. This is the equation number 1. Both are equal. So when two forces acting at a point and which are mutually perpendicular to each other, the resultant of these two will be, from vectors we know, I can write the resultant force due to 192 is equal to under root F1 square plus F2 square. So it is nothing but root 2F. F1 square, this is F square, root 2F. Next. So the resultant acts in this direction. This is Fr. And there is another force acting on this Q because of this Q. So let us say, this is 3, no? Let us put it as 3. F3. Right. Another force due to F2 is also acting in this direction. So if this is A, from Pythagoras theorem, it will be root 2A, the distance. So F2 is equal to, I can write 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q square, and the distance square is 2A square, root 2A whole square. Now how many forces are acting along this direction? Two forces are acting. One we call as Fr, the other one is F2. So the resultant force acting on this charge is equal to, the resultant force acting on this is equal to let us say F prime is equal to Fr plus F2. You can simplify. So in this way you are supposed to do the problem. In sometimes instead of putting all positive charges, he may give one is positive, the other one is negative. Then you have to see the directions of force in that case. So this is about Coulomb's inverse square law. The only difference between Coulomb's inverse square law and gravitational force of attraction is here it can be attractive or repulsive, whereas in that case it is always attractive. And both the forces, the similarity is both the forces have a property called action at a distance. What do you mean by action at distance? If you take the example of gravitational attraction, so there is a force of attraction between any two planets or between the sun and the earth. They are far away from each other, but the effect of attraction is there. So non-contact type of forces, there is an action from a far away distance. So here even you have two charges Q1 and Q2. For example, they are far away from each other. The distance is very high. How they are applying forces on each other? In order to interpret this, we should consider the field that is called electric field associated with this and the field associated with this. Here two fields are interacting with each other. So the charge is associated with a field. What do you mean by electric field? Electric field is the region around the charge, three-dimensional, not two-dimensional. The region or the space around the charge in which its influence is felt, in which you can see some attraction or repulsion. That is called electric field. As you go away from the charge, the intensity of the electric field decreases. For example, you have a light here. You have a light. You see the intensity of the light here. The intensity of the light as you go away decreases. So the space around the electric bulb in which you find its light, its intensity, or if you feel that there is some light, so that extent of space around it is called its field. So similar to this, this is electric field. As I told you, as you go away from the charge, its influence decreases. So how to check how much it can influence? Then I have to put a test charge. I have to put a unit positive charge. I place a unit positive charge here and I find out the force acting on it. That force, let us say F1. I find out the force acting on the same positive charge by placing it at a far away distance, F2. Definitely F2 will be very much less than F1. So in order to find the strength of the electric field or the intensity of the electric field, I have to keep a unit positive charge. Unit positive charge is also called a test positive charge. Test charge. Instead of putting a unit positive charge, you can put another charge Q, any charge Q. So the force acting on that charge, a unit positive charge, at this place is defined as, the force acting at this place is defined as intensity of electric field at that point. It is a vector quantity because force is a vector quantity. Now from Coulomb's inverse square law, there is a charge Q. At a distance of d, I am placing a unit positive charge. Now I take out the same formula, that is F is equal to 9 into 10 to the power of 9. Instead of writing 9 into 10 to the power of 9, only in the case of numericals I have to write 9 into 10 to the power of 9. Otherwise I have to resort to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. So the formula says Q1 Q2 by d square. So what is the value of Q1? Q1 is Q, Q2 is 1. Substitute it. So you will get F is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. So I will get Q by d square. This force is nothing but intensity of electric field. We are not showing vectorially. I have to take the magnitude. even this is also. I am not taking unit vectors of the distance, that is position vectors. This is called intensity of electric field. It is also called field strength. There is one more definition for E, that is intensity of electric field is also called flux density. That is electric flux density. What is electric flux density? That we will see in few minutes. Is it clear? Now, what is the expression for electric field, intensity of electric field due to a point charge? This is a 4 marks question, the simple derivation. So, on derivation, what we got, E is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by d square. Now, you compare this with another equation, F is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 by d square, that is Coulomb's inverse square. Let us say 2 q's by d square. What is the difference between these two? What is the relationship that I can obtain? I can obtain E is equal to F by Q. So, E is short of 1Q. So, F is equal to EQ. So, this is the relationship between intensity of electric field and force of attraction or repulsion. What are the units? This is Newton per Coulomb. Force Newton and the charge is Coulomb. So, this is about intensity of electric field. Now, we have got field lines. Field lines are also called electric lines of force. So, electric lines of force are nothing but the manifestation of electric field by drawing some lines. Suppose there is a unit, there is a positive charge. I will place a small unit positive charge here. This suddenly repelled and it goes away. Suppose if I place here, it goes in this direction. So, these are the imaginary lines in which if a unit positive charge is placed, it would like to move or it tends to move. The line or the curve, it can be a line or a curve. In this case, it is a straight line. A line or a curve, an imaginary one, in which a unit positive charge would like to move is called field line or electric lines of force, or that is the direction in which the force acts. Suppose I have a negative charge here. I place a unit positive charge far away from it. It gets attracted and suddenly it moves toward this. If I place here like this, so I will get the direction of lines is toward the negative charge. So, field lines associated with a positive charge are also called diverging lines. What do you mean by diverging? Going away. They are called diverging. And here they are called converging. Like magnetic poles, here we don't have a pair of charges. In electricity, poles exist separately, whereas in the case of magnetism, both north and south poles are existing combinedly. That is a natural dipole. Here we don't have a combination of two charges. Suppose I have two positive charges here. These are the two positive charges. Then the electric lines will be like this. They are repelled. They go like this. So, here is the place where the intensity of electric field is 0. That is called neutral point or a neutral zone. Suppose you have a plus charge here and you have a minus charge here. This is similar to bar magnet in the case of a magnet that we will discuss in magnetism. Here lines go like this. This is the direction. Now, there are some properties of field lines. Wherever field lines are crowded, there the intensity of electric field will be more. So, naturally, near the charge, intensity of electric field will be more. At a faraway distance, the number of field lines per unit area will be less. They always start from positive charge and end up at a negative charge, right? The direction of intensity of electric field at a given place is given by drawing a tangent to the field line. So, this is the tangent. This is the tangent. Tangent gives the direction of intensity of electric field. Suppose I placed one unit positive charge here. This positive charge is repelled by this. So it wants to go in this direction. And it is attracted by this. So there are two forces, F1 and F2. The resultant is this one. So it is nothing but a tangent drawn to the electric field line. No two field lines can intersect with each other. This is one line, this is second line. Suppose if they are intersecting, it is impossible. If they intersect, I can draw two tangents at the same point of intersection. So at this point, how many tangents are possible? Two. Since intensity of electric field is a vector cannot have two directions at one place. So this is wrong. So field lines cannot intersect. The number of field lines coming out normal to a plane, the number of field lines coming out of a surface or a surface area which is perpendicular to the direction of intensity of electric field. So the number of lines that are being emitted normal to the surface are called, that is called electric flux. This is called electric flux. Electric flux is indicated by pi E. Now what is the other property of field lines? In the case of uniform electric field, that means E is same at all the place. In the case of uniform electric field, field lines are parallel lines. Suppose you take a capacitor that we will discuss later. Capacitor is a parallel plate capacitor. It has got two parallel plates of positive and negative charges. The space between them will have uniform electric field. This is a non-uniform electric field. The field lines are not parallel. So this is the another characteristic of field lines. Now we studied what is flux. So flux is nothing but bundle of electric lines of force. But they are perpendicular, they are coming out normal to the surface of the that charged object. Suppose you take a electric you take a metal of charge plus q. It's a sphere. So if I place a charge q here, the electric field lines will be like this. So another property of charge that we will discuss now after few minutes, that charge always resides outside of the hollow sphere. So suppose these are the field lines. If I take a unit, a normal surface, the number of lines coming out from this surface, imagine it as a football. On the football you have number of squares. And the number of lines coming out of this square is called magnetic flux. When this magnetic flux is divided by the area, if this area is also considered, then that is called flux density. That is nothing but intensity of electric field. So E is equal to pi by A. So pi can be written as E dot A. So a scalar product, but A is not a vector, no? So the direction of area is always taken. Suppose these are the electric lines and this is the surface is inclined. Then the area direction is taken normal to this surface. So this is the direction of E. The angle between these two is theta. This is the surface, electric lines are coming out like this. But actual normal is this one, the angle between this and this. So I can write this as pi is equal to E dot A cos theta. So magnetic flux can be positive, negative or 0 depending upon the angle cos theta. If theta is equal to 90, we know cos 90 is 0. If theta is equal to 180, cos 180 is minus 1. If theta is equal to 0, cos 0 is 1. This magnetic flux, based on magnetic flux we have Gauss law, that we will discuss later. So before I conclude, I would like to discuss the characteristics or the properties of a charge. Now, as I told you, we started with charge, now we'll end up with charge. This is the last point of our discussion. So, the first property of charge is additivity of charges. So, I can add charges. Suppose I have number of charges in this Q1, Q2, Q3. Some are positive, some are negative. The net charge, that is the total charge, is nothing but sigma q. That is, algebraic sum is nothing but the net charge. Some may be plus, some may be minus, like that. This is one. The second one is charge is conserved. As I told you, we are not going to create charge or we are not going to destroy charge. Charge is the intrinsic property of the matter. Intrinsic property, very, very important. We are not creating any charge. Charges are already existing. We are not creating any charge. We are not destroying any charge. For any isolated system, the total charge remains constant. This is law of conservation of charge. Charge is neither created nor destroyed. And the third one is charge is quantized. Charge is not a continuous one, it has got discrete values. As I told you, charge Q is equal to plus or minus Ne. N is a number. So, any charge must be the integral multiple of the charge of the electron. Here, charge of the electron E is equal to 1.602 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb. So, I cannot have E by 2 charge, I cannot have E by 5 charge, I cannot have E by 7, like that. In the case of quarks, quarks are the most fundamental particles. Because of quarks, we have protons and neutrons. Quarks can have plus 2 by 3 or minus 2 by 3 or plus or minus 1 by 3. But they are not considered as the fundamental charges in the universe because they never exist separately. They exist combinedly. Like electron, you can't have a separate quark. There are 6 types of quarks. They combinedly, because of different combinations, they form protons and neutrons. That is another case. So, what is the unit for charge? Coulomb. And what is the charge on the electron? 1.602. How many electrons are required to get 1 coulomb of charge? So, this quantization of charge was experimentally proved by Millikan. Millikan proved that charge is always quantized. You cannot have a continuous value like a fluid in the case of charge. You can have E, you can have 2E, you can have 3E and so on. You can't have the fraction value. That was proved by Millikan by doing an experiment called oil drop experiment. He is responsible for finding the charge on the electron. The smallest value, that is 1.602 into 10 to the power of minus 19. You have to put 18 zeros before 1. That much small. So, that is charge is quantized. So, 1 electron has got 1.602 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb. How in 1 coulomb, how many electrons are existing? You take this into the denominator, you will get 1 coulomb of charge consists 1 by 1.602 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulombs. This will become 6.25 into 10 to the power of 18 electrons. So, the huge number of electrons will give you a little charge called 1 coulomb. Either you have to give electrons or you have to take electrons. As I told you, charge always resides outside. This is the another property. So, this was proved by Faraday, called Faraday's cage. So, you take a hollow sphere and you sit inside, even the thunderbolt can't harm you. That is the reason why persons who are going through, who are traveling by a car will not be affected by thunderbolts. And satellites, they have got sensitive equipments. There can be some electrostatic effect on them. So, to save those equipments in satellite, they keep all those electronic equipments sensitive equipments within a Faraday's cage, that means within a mesh of a metal enclosure. So that will save them, and the lifespan of the satellite can be extended to 10 to 12 years. So this is about the introduction, Coulomb's inverse square law, and what is electric field, intensity of electric field, what is electric flux. We will continue in the next lesson. Thank you.